All right, we are back for another episode of the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast. Shh. Say less and sell more. That's what we're about. I am joined by another one of my rock star friends and guests. This guy is killing it all over the place. I can't open up my phone and not see him on everything, like sharing, preaching, evangelizing for the packaging industry and teaching people how to be better sellers. I am joined by my man, my friend, Mr. Adam Peak. What's going on, Adam?
What's good, Ronell? I love being on the other side of the podcast interview situation. Yeah. So I'm so glad to be here, and it's been fun to be part of your environment. For the last,
thanks, brother.
Gosh, I think it's been 3.5, 4 years.
Yes.
So I really appreciate
it. Hasn't
all you've been able to do for me. And
well, brother, listen, it has been a joy to and a pleasure and an honor to be part of your story, a small part of your story. But dude, man, talk about inspiring. Like iron sharpens iron. I see you on that grind, doing it, evangelizing, man, and just being just an ambassador for your industry and for this profession of sales, man, that I know that you believe like I do, that it is the noblest of professions, man. Like this is something we are and that's part of what this podcast is about, man. Like we want to show the excellence that's out there in sales. We want to help educate and help to mentor and nurture the sales community and let everyone out there know that, hey, look, you're not alone. We're out there. We're with you. And I'm bringing on rock stars like Adam to share his truth and ways that to help you to not only take your game up, but like know that you're part of a much wider and bigger community. So with all that said, Adam, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience what it is that you do and your title.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ronell. So I do a lot, to be honest with you. As you kind of mentioned, I do a lot of content creating around the packaging industry. I just put up a post recently. I looked up what percentage of the U.S. GDP is tech sales, and it's less than 10%. And I was like, well, why is everyone only talking about these like, quote, like sexy industries? Like I work in a boring industry and I love it. Most people don't, I mean, it's not boring to me, right? But like most people don't think about packaging. Like you probably don't walk around and think about like concrete sales and lumber sales and, things like that, right? That are sort of more, quote, boring industries. But that's over 90% of our economy, right? Is people like me. And so I like to be an evangelist. Like you said, it's evangelism means like to bring good news. I like to bring good news and shine light on the industry that I'm part of, which is packaging. I've been in it for 15 years. I'm the senior vice president of sales for Meyers, which is a printing and packaging manufacturer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I live in Salt Lake City. I got 5 kids. I've got 1 wife. And man, I love...
It's funny you have to say
true,
that,
bro. It's you just got to keep it real with people. And I've been in sales for just about a decade now, and have really, like you mentioned, have really loved this profession and this field. Yeah. And I find it when it's done right, there's nothing more rewarding and more noble. And when you can carry yourself high with integrity and with empathy and creativity, you can do a lot.
I love it, man. I love it. So, you mentioned that you have been getting a check in this business for about 10 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, like your sales career, what was your very first sales job? And as I'm asking this, I want to be clear, because sometimes when I ask our guests, like, what's your first sales job? They're thinking like, oh, well, the first like big company they worked for. No, like, what was that first? Where did you make your first dime to sell something?
Got it. I mean, one could argue that when you're a pastor, you're kind of selling stuff. Ooh. Like you're kind of selling things.
And Adam, my mother would argue against that. My mother would argue because
I know. But like I had a job. Listen, when just got out of college, like I had a job. I was working for a nonprofit. I was a Christian minister,
Hmm.
and I had to go raise support. There is nothing more difficult than going to talk to friends and family and business leaders about, can you donate $100 to $200 a month so that I can go be a counselor, be a help, be a pastor to college students who can't afford to pay me. That's a tough
Yeah.
ask, right? Like I learned I learned so much during that period. So was it a sales job? No, it wasn't. But I mean, I was working in the cafeteria one time at Colorado State, the Colorado State University. See what I did
The
there, Ronell? I was at
Does anyone say that? Is that you're just trolling? You're
only
trolling the Buckeye fans.
only
Is that what it is?
only Buckeye fans, only Buckeye. No one else says that except for me. So I was at Colorado State, and I remember one time we had cookies. I was working in the dorms, like in the cafeteria, and I chopped up these cookies that were like these soft serve ones into
Yeah.
quarters, and I put out a sign that said, "I said freshman 15 question mark. Try our new cookie bites. A quarter of the calories, a quarter of the
Nice.
fat, all the great taste." And people were like, "Oh, low fat cookies," and they were grabbing like 6 of them. I'm like, "You don't understand. It's just a quarter of this." So man, I've been trying to get creative and sell since I was in high school and college. My first sales job in the packaging industry though was at a small packaging distributor in actually it was for my uncle.
Hmm.
I started selling for my uncle Peak Packaging. Shout out to Peak
Shout
Packaging in
out,
Carlsbad,
Peak.
California.
So,
Yeah.
I want to go back to your pastoring a little bit because, I am of the opinion that it is very much there's a very much an aspect of selling in religion, and for me, many people know that I started, I was knocking on doors and don't think and doing public speaking all that when I was 8 years old, and for the church, right? And I learned so many valuable lessons that that I to this day that are still just like, I mean, just number one for me. So these basic lessons, these basic fundamentals that I learned in that work have still, they've benefited me, 40, almost 40 years later. So like for you, can you tell me, like, what do you think some of those soft skills or that you learned early on in pastoring, how did those translate and how did those benefit you in your sales career?
We have a mutual friend, Keenan,
Hmm.
right? Keenan wrote Gap
Shout
Cell, and
out,
he's a
Keenan.
he's a great he's a great dude. Shout out to Keenan. And when I was talking to him the first time, I was like, "Hey, you're not like the original inventor of this. Like this was part of like evangelism explosion when I was in youth group." And what that was is like you had to get people to realize that like their current state was like, I am a sinner. Like understanding that, not just like do you really understand that? And then what is your future state, which is, you want to be in heaven or whatever it was. And then what was that gap? Like, can you become perfect? And the answer was, if they said, oh, I don't know, I'm a pretty good person, you'd walk them through the 10 commandments and you'd say like, oh, have you lied? Yeah. Okay. Well, all these things. And you see this gap. And then you say like, well, there's a whole illustration called the bridge illustration. And you would say like, Jesus filled the gap.
Hmm.
And that's your gap to get. So, it was stuff like that I started to realize I have been equipped with things, understanding people and what it is that they're trying to accomplish, whether it was doing premarital counseling with couples right out of college and trying to set them up for success, or dealing on the back end with couples who are struggling, or parents who are struggling with their kids. Like it's understanding how to get into the situation, and like I said at the beginning, engage with empathy, engage with creativity, put others before
Yeah.
yourself. The idea of shut the hell up and sell actually comes, I would say, from like a Bible passage that we're to be slow to speak, we're to be quick to listen, and, we're to be slow to become angry. Like that was stuff that was ingrained in me at an early age, that I can now bring my whole self into this. Cause it's not like I didn't like stop being a Christian minister. Like I still get to preach on occasion. Like I didn't, but I get to be all of who I
Yeah.
am in all of these
Yeah.
settings.
I love it, man. All right. So one of the things that, I learned in ministry back in the day was, again, just learn the ability to connect with people via, emotion and pain, and the power of that as being a very powerful motivator, which is something that, I mean, to this day, like, I tell this story to my to my sellers I have for damn near for decades now. I always talk about finding that pain, right? Like, it's like our job to find that pain, seek out that pain, and then we stick a knife in that. It's a little, so if there's a little cut, we stick our knife in that. We rip that open. We make it. I know that's graphic, but we rip that open wide as possible, right? Like, we want them to reconnect with that pain. Part of that comes from my upbringing and just under and preaching and ministry, and just really understanding how, when people were in a position where they were some sort of emotional trauma or something in life like that, it was easier for us to connect with them. Now, that's kind of the root of that. Anyway, is that
Yeah.
something that you've experienced, or you feel like maybe that was something you learned a
Yeah,
little
for
bit?
sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's I'm especially sensitive to it because it can quickly become
Yeah,
manipulative, and
true.
this is the downside of what you're talking about. And
Good
so
point.
I really try to be careful
Mm-hmm.
in that, because you can get people in their most vulnerable state, and certainly there are unfortunate and awful stories that have been told across the world, right? Of like of pastors and religious leaders that have
Yeah.
manipulated through that pain. And so I really am careful. And even on a sales perspective, there was one story where I was talking with a buyer of packaging, and this person was telling me like how terrible their job was, and we're in the meeting, like they're like, I hate my job, and I'm like, oh, well, tell me more about that, like I'm doing like the Sandler, like, let's go down the pain funnel. And we get to a point where this person stops and they said, you're a pastor, right? And I was like, yeah. And then they went in on, well, this is impacting my ability to have sex with my girlfriend, and I'm afraid she's going to break up with me and leave me because I can't perform in the bedroom, and I'm just so stressed when I come home that all I want to do is drink, and
Mm.
like it's causing me and I'm just like, I have gotten too far. Like, yeah, I want to talk about, and I didn't guide it down there, but I was like, I could stay here, but this is going to be, this is too deep for
Yeah.
me in this moment. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like I had to, and I was like, man, I'm sorry. And I just said, the very pastoral thing was like, and it's true. Like when I say to someone like, hey, I'm going to be praying for you, that's not a line. Like I
Mm-hmm.
actually like pray for people. I was like, I'm going to be praying through that. Like, can we get back to talking about this though? Like that's a whole other conversation, So it's sometimes it can get a little bit too much, too intense,
Mm-hmm.
and I gotta be able to know when that is and pull it back, or else you can end up in some pretty tough
Man, that's
situations.
interesting, dude. Thanks for sharing that. And that's what this is
Yeah.
about. Like, I want, at the end of the day, like, sales is this. We're real people out here. We're real people, and trying to solve problems, and trying to create solutions for people in order to create, build relationships, long term relationships. And so this is the type of conversations I think can help people to better understand, one, what the end goal is, but two, some of the challenges that we have on that path to success. All right, so I believe that a big part of the success that we have, and guys, if you read the dedication in my book, you'll really understand this at another level. But I believe that the um, the path to success and sales and life and everything is paved with mentors and folks that were there for us, man. Folks that, and sometimes it may not be something massive, it may be something little, but that little thing impacts your life, or it teaches you a lesson. So, Adam, this is at this time I want to ask you to shout out a mentor, someone that made an impact in your life. And I'm talking about those unsung heroes, right? It's always easy to name, the people that are higher profile, right? But who's one of those unsung heroes that made an impact in your sales career? Maybe it was a former boss, maybe it was a peer, maybe it was a customer. Can you share someone that made an impact? Let's give them a shout out.
Oh man. Honestly, there are too many, and I don't mean
Hmm.
that like I mean like I am not where I'm at without a whole, community of people that have helped to build me up and impacted me some in some big ways and some small ways. Um, but the easiest answer for me is my dad. My dad is somebody, he's no profile really. He's been in sales. He's sold semiconductor test equipment for his career. This sort of like job that most people don't really know about, and his impact on my life is just it's amazing. No, not just as a dad, but like as a salesperson. Like we talk all the time, almost daily, at least weekly. We talk, and he shares just little nuggets of information with me that I'm like, man, I'm doing that all the time, Dad. Like, so it's one thing to like read and like learn from kind of like the influencers, people who are out there like you and I,
Yeah.
right? Like we're out there, like my good friend Rob Jepson. Like Rob's had a big impact on my life here in Utah as well. But like there's people like my pops, right? Ed Peak, who just like are in it.
Hmm.
We're just in it together. And so he's been an incredible part of my
All right.
life.
Shout out Mr. Ed Peak. Eh,
That's right.
All right. Now, next thing I want to ask you, Adam, is I want to get into your story, man. So, like, again, business. I run the Business and Bourbon podcast too, so there's a little overlap
Shout
there.
out shout out to Business
Shout
and
out to
Bourbon podcast.
listen, man. No editing on this. No editing. Shout out to Business and Bourbon. Make sure that you're a member of Business and Bourbon and that you are coming to our events and listen to the podcast. All right, but this is
Do
the
it.
Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast, and so the Shut
That's
the
right.
Hell Up and Sell book and the concept behind the book is about sharing stories. That are relatable and stories that teach people lessons, man. Because I feel like this is, at least for salespeople, this is how we learn best, man. And so, I'd like to ask you to share a story from your career. And again, this is a story. It can be anything you want because it's your truth, man. But an experience, that impacted your sales career and taught you a lesson, which you apply to this day.
Yeah, there's again too many, but one that comes to mind is I was calling on this prospect for a while. And it was a good while. It was probably 9, 10 months, something like that. And we start to get a little bit of traction, and they we do all the stuff, right? Like we quote all the things, we do all the normative sales stuff, and and I put this opportunity in as a $3 million annual opportunity. So man, I'm grinding on this. That's a big opportunity in the packaging world. Um, and so they finally call me and they're like, "You got it. It's you." And I was like, "What?" It's like early on. I still remember I was in Target when they called, like looking for some samples. I was like, "Yeah," like Liverpool Football Group, LFG, that whole
Yeah.
thing. So I'm all pumped, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna be sending over the order." So I call my boss, and I'm like, "Dude, close one, let's go." So I send over the order, and it's for $7,000. They're like, "Finally getting that order," and I was like, "Oh, is this like a test order?"
Yeah.
And they go, "No, no, no. This is like this is like a monthly use." And I was like, "I thought you said." I thought you said it was you guys are spending about $3 million on these labels. They were like, no, 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 that's all of our packaging, which we don't make all of it, right? Like we just
Yeah.
printed labels in boxes. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, so cool, right? Like I still got it. But like I had to go back, like my boss already reported up to like the CEO, like, dude, we nailed it.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, yeah, about that. It's like $100,000 a year. It's not still great.
Yeah.
But so, I took that, and then not maybe 3 months later, we're sitting in a meeting with a new prospect, and I asked them the question, right? Like I was like, so, just ballpark it, how much do you spend on, and I was very specific, shrink sleeves, labels, and folding cartons. And they said $3.5 million. And I laughed. And they were like, why did you laugh? And I'm like, let me tell you what just happened to me. And so I tell them this story. And I was like, if we move forward, is that going to happen to me again? Like, am I asking you the wrong question? And she was like, no, I spend about $300,000 a month on those specific products. And so it taught me to like not have what like I went through Sandler training. Like Sandler calls it happy ears, but be willing to like ask the more pointed questions in a sales process. It was it was a great lesson to be able to learn. It's one I've carried with me all throughout, right? Like clarify the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Don't and you know, don't get overly high, don't stay really low, but clarify it, be objective with it. And so I learned that early on, praise the Lord. Or else my sales career might have gotten pretty quickly derailed because I'm an eternal optimist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll hear the first good thing and tell the whole
Oh
world
my
about
God,
it.
dude, that is a pitfall in sales. We hear
Yep.
what we want to, and it reminds me of, first of all, fantastic story, great lesson in that for folks, and really getting better at discovery, and it actually connects me with something, with the concept that's in the book, and actually one of the quotes from the book, which is, it's questions without genuine curiosity will lead you to what you want to hear and not what you need to hear. Right? Think about that.
I can't like that enough. I can't like that enough, bro.
So,
That's
like,
amazing.
it's in sales, we all want the sell, right? That's all we can see. And it's all about us. And so a lot of times we're not asking the right questions, and we're not doing, not only asking the right questions, but asking them with the right philosophy or the right mindset to fuel how we're asking those questions. And so we get what we want to hear, and in
Hmm.
this case, your story may not be 100% that way, but yeah, you did hear what you wanted to hear. And maybe if you
Yeah,
drilled down
100%.
and you asked a little bit more, maybe you would have found out, oh no, it's 100 grand a year, which you still would have been stoked. You're still the hero, but
I would have been stoked, but I wouldn't have had to go call the CEO and be like, my bad, homie. That
what
would
was
have been
that call
good.
like?
It was all right. You know, I mean, they understood. I was new into sales, but it's still embarrassing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's not a fun because it's like, you know, the movie Office Space. Like this is not a mundane detail, Michael. Like it was not mundane at all.
Yeah. Well,
That was a big
and
deal.
and even though you still were successful, you closed the deal. We're always building our reputation, right? Our internal reputation and our external reputation. So like that no doubt, it kind of probably framed how your
Yeah,
managers looked at you, at least in the
100%.
the immediate time after that. Now you had an opportunity, I'm sure, to correct that over time, and which I'm sure that you did. So
Yeah.
great story. Thanks for sharing that. Now, so the next thing I want to ask you, Adam, is, again, the book is about sharing stories, and then very practical, very pragmatic advice. Because I believe at the end of the day, I don't, let's not make shit complicated. And a lot of sales, it's not that doggone complicated when you understand the fundamentals. So can you share a tip, a strategy, whatever you want, a piece of advice that someone can take from listening to this podcast episode and immediately apply to their business and start to have some success?
I'm gonna tie it all together. Watch this. So, in my pastoral life, I studied what's called a biblical exegesis.
Mhm.
Okay. And what that means is you want to exegete out of the Bible what it actually says, and then you want to go present that to the congregation. So there's a whole process that I learned when I went to Dallas Theological Seminary about biblical exegesis. The opposite of that is called eisegesis, which is where a lot of people get in trouble in sales and in theology and philosophy and everything, which is you have a preconceived idea and you read that onto, it means to lay on top of, you read it onto the text, you read it into the situation. And so you don't want to be doing that, right? This is where you get in an echo chamber. This is where you just surround yourself with a bunch of yes people. It's a dangerous place to be. So we want to live in exegesis. I think one thing that is it's super boring, but it's highly practical and it's actionable tomorrow. From an exegetical process is you want to start the process with what do I know is objectively true, not what do I hope is true, not like, and it's a boring process. And if you take 10 minutes before you make that discovery call, before you have that first outreach, before you reach out on LinkedIn, if you take 10 minutes and you just write down, I can observe dot dot dot, and I use an Excel spreadsheet, and you just write down, like, because objective, observe is the same root word. I can observe that, Ronell has a book called Shut the Hell Up and Sell. I can observe that Ronell lives in Georgia. I can observe so on and so forth, right? And you list out about 20 things that are just objectively true, and it feels so boring. But then you take all of that data and you write out, what questions would I like to have answered from this objectively true data? So these are interpretive questions. When you talk about engaging with purposed, like intentional curiosity, that can help you frame out, what types of questions do I think will be important? So is it important for you to know, like, what street you live on in Georgia? No, that's not going to be important at all, unless I'm selling some type of yard service and I need to know about the HOAs. Okay, then maybe that would be important. But if I was selling marketing services for a book, that's not important, right? So you could go through and start to craft based on what you know, like so what do I know is true? And then what would I like to know on the call?
Mm-hmm.
And those two things, it sounds so boring to write out what is objectively true, because we want to skip to all the flashy, sexy stuff about like how to ask all of the discovery questions, and how do you engage with how do you get out their emotional stuff? How do you ask, like, that stuff is all critically important. If you haven't already, Deb Calvert has a great book on that. But prior to that, I think doing the boring work of just outlining what I know is objectively true. There's a lot of information online, and then crafting your questions around that will help you exegetically pull out from the conversation from a place of objective truth, not just what you want to hear, and not subjectivity. So that would be one thing that I would start with.
I love it.
Um,
So that's really just bringing better focus and organization to your discovery. So that's
yeah, the pre call work that most of us just don't
mm-hmm.
do. I mean, it's easy to say we'll do it, and limit yourself. Rachel May over at a sales growth company told me, like, limit yourself to 10 minutes, because you can go down a rabbit hole of craziness if you can just keep going right online, of finding out information about the company, about the person, about their coworkers. Who do we know? Oh, they went to the Ohio State University. Oh, they were in this sorority, they were in this fraternity. Oh, they know this. It's like, okay, limit yourself, right? To set a timer and then go
So,
from
and
there.
just to clarify, so you're talking about using this process and using this strategy specifically in the discovery, or are we talking about even in the um, oh my god, brain freeze?
The
Yeah,
demo, or whatever you want to
yeah,
call it, the proposal, you could it's a
prospecting.
process, like, prospecting. Yeah, it's honestly, it's a process that I use in parenting. I use it in preparing a sermon. I would use it in making a presentation to a
hmm
company, um, because I want to be building from a place of truth.
Yeah,
That's really where I want to start.
yep,
I don't want to have a foundation, like it says in the Bible, like, don't build your house on the sand, right? Like, I want to have a firm foundation that I'm going to build upon, because then I can go back to that truth,
yeah.
right? I can go back to that when things get a little, when you get ghosted and all that stuff. If I have that foundation, I can go back to it. If my foundation is shaky, I don't really have much to
Yeah.
fall back on, and then I'm just left chasing
Oh, I
stuff.
love that. I love that. It reminds me of something that I never actually, it's something I've practiced, but never actually had it put into words until, a good friend, Randy Reamersma, um, kind of put it into words for me. So for me, I have always um, done this thing. Well, I'll just come out and tell you what he calls it. He calls it running to the truth, right? And
Mm.
that, just think about what that implies, running to the truth. It's like, it's not just like, okay, passively looking for the truth. It's like aggressively going after, let me find what's true first. Because once I understand what's true, what's real, that's the foundation that I can build on. Right. A lot of times
Yep.
in sales and everything, we live in delusion. We live in what we wish it was, or what we want it to be, or what we hope it is. No, but when you understand exactly where things are, not just sales and business, you understand exactly where you stand, exactly where things are. The things that are not objectively true, that are objectively true. Now you can go ahead and you can build upon that. Dude, great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being part of this, man. You are, again, part of a group of folks that I just have tremendous respect for and value you for your sales acumen. But beyond that, just a good dude, man. So tell people where, I know you're everywhere, but tell people where they can connect with you, where they can follow you, where they can reach out to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And back at you, Ronell. I mean, there's a lot of people out there in the on the internet world in sales, and it's just great. It's great to connect with just really good humans who want to do good things. So yeah, I'm not everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn primarily, so you can look me up, Adam Peak, on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. I post content pretty frequently on there. I've got a podcast called the People of Packaging Podcast. I recently got on TikTok about a year ago, and that's been wild. That is a wild world, but it's been super fun. And that's at Packaging Pastor if you want to connect up with me on TikTok. But yeah, I mean, mostly LinkedIn. If you're in the Utah area, then let's connect in real life. These video calls are great. You know, the audio stuff, like it's been wonderful, but man, it sure has been great to just connect up with people and break bread and hear about their stories and their journeys. So,
well, and I know that you'll agree, like that's the key to doing great business, man. It's really connecting with people. And I consider you a friend, and our relationship started with me getting a message from this dude from Colorado who was moving to Utah. It's a random guy named Adam, and like, hey, I'm coming to Atlanta. Let's have coffee. And I said, bet. Let's have coffee. And then we found out that we have so much more like in common and interest and all that sort of thing. So that's how you build relationships. And at the end of the day, in business and sales, that's what you're doing, man. That's what you're doing, guys. You're building, at least those that are successful understand it's about building deeper relationships with people you've got great alignment with and similar values. Would you agree?
Likewise, yeah, 100%. I believe the word the kids would say is big facts.
Big facts. All right. With that said, Adam, thank you again for hanging out with me, man. And make sure that you guys are reaching out to Adam. Connect with him on LinkedIn. His TikTok stuff is super fun and interesting. I've been watching that as of late. And so connect with him on there. You're kind of becoming a big thing there, man. You're becoming a deal on TikTok, man. You got trolls and everything.
It's the wigs. It's the wigs. Yeah, that's what's really.
I like the packaging stuff. I like the random packaging, like observations in the grocery stores and stuff. That's interesting. In fact, yeah, I'll close on this. Shout out to Bearded Papas.
Oh yeah. Beard Papa. That thing was legit.
Yeah. So I went there yesterday because of you. And had their little
That's right
for the very first time. I was like, pretty damn good. Yeah, because your video.
Yo, Beard Papa, hit me up about that sponsorship opportunity.
Beard Papa.
Well, yeah, let's go.
All right, my guy. I appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you all for listening or watching or however you're consuming this. We appreciate you. Your time means the world to us. And I understand that's your most valued asset. And, you know, if you've taken the time to spend some of that with us, again, it means the world to us. So, in closing, remember, guys, say less, sell more. Hey guys, it's Ronell, and I just wanted to thank you for listening to this episode of the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast. If you liked it, please rate us 5 stars on whichever podcasting platform you're listening to this on. And while you're at it, punch that subscribe button. That way you get notified every time we drop a brand new episode. Hey, I'd also appreciate it if you went to our website, shutthehellupandsell.com, and became a member. It's absolutely free, and you'll have the opportunity to listen to previous episodes of our podcast, check out some of our free courses, get a copy of the book, and we'll send you sales tips and motivational nuggets from time to time. Lastly, if you'd like to book me for either appearances or speaking engagements, just send an email to my team at team@shutthehellupandsell.com.